Madam President, we have a distinguished guest in the chambers. Dr. Paul Lawrence, Undersecretary for Benefits of Veterans Affairs.
Sergeant at Arms, please have our distinguished guest escorted to the head table. All right. Sir, podium's all yours. We'll go ahead and get started.
Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and talk to you today. I know you invited the Secretary, and he sends his regrets. He was actually asked by the President to go to the Far East to see our veterans in places like Guam and Micronesia. My geography isn't good there. They serve at a very high rate, and so he was there. In addition, the President asked him to go to send signals to our friends and our enemies that America remains the premier superpower in the world, all the world. So that's where he is, and again, you got me. Next slide. So what I want to do first before I begin is make sure I thank your leadership. They've been incredibly welcoming to including try to get me to eat as much Iowa corn last night as I could. And also on here, not on here, is Daniel Elkins, who we work with in Washington regularly. So again, we appreciate all the partnership with you all. Next slide. I thought I'd take a little minute to let you know who I am, because there's a couple of things that bother me when I sort of go places. One is like, well, who's this guy? And is he a veteran? Because, you know, I used to wear my airborne wings on. But when I travel on commercial airlines, it kind of scares them. So I just use the American flag. So it bothered that. I'm actually, if you're keeping score, the second highest ranking person who's been confirmed by the Senate in the department. So I don't want you to think the Secretary sent somebody not important, because he values the partnership. But I also want you to know that I come from a military family. My father was in the Army, a career Army officer, served in Korea and Vietnam, and he's buried in Arlington Cemetery. My mother was a large family. 5 of her brothers served in World War II. 1 was killed in Korea, and my middle name is named after him. So I come from a military family. I served through ROTC, so did my brother. I got out and became a consultant in the civilian world, and a lot of my experience there is based on my financial experiences in roles that are very similar to some of the things that go on in the Veterans Benefits Administration. But what I really want to tell you about is sort of that last point of there is like, why did I take this job? Because I think what happens, and it's happened to me the other day on an airplane, believe it or not, this never happened before I became this job, but they try to upgrade you to first class. And I can't do that. If you want to be in the Washington Post and very quickly become an ex-political appointee, you take the first class upgrade. It's actually quite hard to turn it in. So I found that out. And so when I say I'm a political appointee, they immediately say, are you a friend of the president? And actually, that is not true. The undersecretaries at VA are actually selected through an interview process known as a commission, where you go through and people interview you, and you do kind of the classic interview sort of thing. And so I remember in the fall of 2017, when folks said, this job is opening up, you should apply. It was one of my friends who was at the department. I figured, what the heck, he's my friend, I send in a resume, 1,000 people send in resumes, I'll honor that, and that'll be the end of that, because I had a great job in the private sector. Well, about 2 months later, they called me up and said, you're welcome to come interview for this job. We've selected you to be part of the people you interview. And so you sort of have this moment where you say, well, but I have this great job, maybe I shouldn't have sent my resume in. And then I recall an experience I had had about a year before. My son is an optometrist, glasses, and he was in optometry school, and afterwards he was planning to go his residency, where you spend an additional year getting training before you go off and practice. And he asked me, he came one day to me, he said, Dad, I tell you what, the residency options look like this. I can stay in a private practice, and that's really interesting. I'll get more skills. They pay a little bit more. I could go to a tribal thing, work with the underprivileged, and there's this thing called VA, and he kind of poo-pooed it and wanted to talk about the neat private practices he had been to. So I said to him, I said, do you remember the story I told you about your father, the cemetery, you've been there, the uncles, the great uncles, the country, whatever, how can you not take the VA? And he did, and he got selected to serve his residency at the Hampton Medical Center, VA-MC in Hampton, Virginia, and it proved out wonderfully. And so I sat there in the moment and realized I've already given the speech to my son about why you serve, and that's what motivated me to go and pursue this thing, and I was selected and confirmed, and here I am. So I wanted you to give a little history that I thought carefully about this position and what it would mean and what I would do here and what I would focus on my time, and that is serving veterans. I have no aspirations for another job. You know, I do not want to be the secretary. I want to do this job for veterans, and so that's what I'm here doing. Next slide. So I thought what I'd do is give you a quick update on some of the things going on from VA, bring you some news the Secretary would share with you, talk a little bit about VBA, the benefits, some issues that I know are coming up, and then offer you some insights into how to stay in touch with us. Next slide. The Secretary talks a lot about VA undergoing the greatest period of transformation since Omar Bradley ran it. And that has to do with a lot of things that I want to take you through, but one of them is our focus on serving veterans and really providing world-class service to our veterans. So let me explain in the next slide the things we're doing that are based on legislation initiatives that have been going on the last 2 years. Mike, next slide. Since 2017, there's been a series of laws and initiatives that are driving this transformation. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about them. Accountability and mission are laws, electronic health records is initiative, and the GI Bill modernization, appeals modernization are things that go on in VBA. So I'd like to tell you for a minute how this is transforming the VA. Next slide. The Accountability Act was passed in 2017 to enable the VA to deal with habitually bad performers. So one of the ways we're going to bring better service to our veterans is remove people who don't want to serve veterans. Now, this might seem like a profoundly obvious insight, but the VA is the only place in the federal government we are able to do that without going through arduous rounds of appeals and like. So when you hear the president speak and he comes and he gets into the part of his speech where he riffs and said, and I passed this law that said you could be fired at the VA, this is what he's talking about, and I can't tell you how powerfully important it is. And even the most protective of the unions will say to us, we know you need to get rid of these people, and so this is very important. And again, I will tell you my personal journey, not having this law would have made me not turn in my resume and want to be interested in this job, because you can't make changes if you can't get rid of habitually bad performers. That was 2017. The Mission Act, and I know folks from here were there at the signing in the Rose Garden last year, is a very, very powerful law that enables veterans to have more choice as to how they receive their health care. And quite simply, it deals with the following. Gee, how comes I have to travel 4 hours to get care at a VA medical center and go through the hospital or the providers in my town 10 minutes away? That's what this law is designed to do, enable more choice for veterans, that you can choose what's closer and convenient to you. All right? It also provides additional ways for us to recruit providers. There's a real aggressive search for medical professionals, and VA needs to be armed to do that, and enables a whole bunch of things that are good, not the least of which is urgent care and the ability not to have to travel to a hospital, but to go to those minute clinics and enable that to be possible. It is very, very good stuff. It went into effect on June 6th, as we promised, 1 year to the date. So that was a very good thing, because I think people doubt VA can actually do stuff like that. But the most important thing is what's written at the bottom, because we got a lot of this when we were going through hearings this spring. Well, this is just a secret way into privatize the VA, and I can't put big enough red lines through that to tell you that is not true. The illusion of we're meeting to plan the privatization of the VA is not true. The Secretary of all people will talk about the need for veterans to go to places like the VA where they understand veterans and that special thing. So his personal journey is one that will not prevent that from happening. So I just want to let you know about that. Next slide. The other sort of thing is electronic health record, which again, if you access private health care, is not that big a deal but it really is a big deal in the VA. And right now, what we've decided to do about a year ago is adopt the same health record that they have in DOD, so there'll be a seamless exchange between your service and then VA providing benefits. The Secretary tells a powerful story of his father, who was severely injured in the Vietnam War and the invasion of Cambodia. For the rest of his life, would cart around an 800-page health record, and that's what this is designed to prevent. From a VBA, from a benefits perspective, this is very powerful stuff because we'll be able to find your health record quickly when you access benefits. In a perfect world, we'll be able to look at it before you show up and say, it is most likely, given your service and your journey, this is what you'll need or be entitled to based on our history. We could probably use your help. This is a big deal and will take a long time for us to do. I think we said it's a 10-year journey to fully implement. It's large and complex. Any help you can when people say that seems like it's a long time, you could remind them it's complex, and that would be really helpful. Next slide. Over at VBA, we handle a couple other things, so I want to give you a minute on VBA. We process the benefits. We're a smaller group compared to the hospitals. We're about 24,000 people. Most of them are veterans. We have offices in 56 major cities around the country and one in Manila. To include one here in Des Moines, where I'll go this afternoon, or actually later this morning when I get done, and other sites. We administer the benefits. You can see last quarter, we administered $28 billion in benefits. Yearly, we administer over $100 billion in benefits to veterans. Next one. There are 8 business lines, 8 benefits we deal with, and I just want to run you through this real quickly, not to drain it, but to make you aware of the wide range of benefits America provides to its veterans. In the upper right, you know about compensation. If you've been injured or disabled, you apply for compensation grants, and we do that. Appeals, we provide an active mechanism for you. If you disagree with our decision upon anything, you can go and appeal. Home loan guarantee, right? No money down, purchase of a home. Upper left-hand corner, education, the classic GI Bill, and the billions of dollars of benefits. Insurance. I know that I regularly talk to the young people in the audience that buying insurance early is a good thing. We actually run the 14th largest insurance company in the United States, and it is highly touted. I'd urge you to look into that. Pension and fiduciary refers to what's available for you if you find yourself in an unfortunate situation where you have limited access to resources. Pension and fiduciary, in the unlikely event you are unable to manage your benefits yourself, we will appoint somebody to manage those benefits for you. And the newest, and vocational rehabilitation employment is what it is. It helps people whose life has changed to get counseling, to find a better path. And the newest one, which I started last year, is transition and economic development, focusing on making sure we do all we can for veterans and service members as they leave and transition back into civilian life and reintegrate. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those, but I want you to know the benefits portfolio is large and generous. A couple things. When I showed up a year ago, I promised, and I've stuck to this, that I would have priorities, and this is what I would focus on, just to let you know. The first one on the left is providing veterans the benefits they've earned in a manner that honors their service. The Secretary showed up 2 months ago and talked about the importance of customer service. Had he showed up before me, I would have called that customer service, but that's what it is. It's really trying to make sure the benefits administration works well. The middle one talks about being good fiscal stewards with administering over $100 billion. There's tremendous pressure from both sides. The American taxpayer wants to make sure we do it well. The veterans want to make sure we do it accurately, and somehow we've got to always seek the middle ground so we're seen as fair, not yielding tipping too much to either side. And the last one is collaboration, and that's in part why I'm so excited to be here. It bothers me tremendously when I see organizations, and this is not you, but the classic veteran service organizations who have on their website, their mission is to fight for veterans' benefits. And I always ask myself, who are you fighting with? We're on the same team. So I understand that we may never agree on everything, but the sense of being able to align on what's important for veterans strikes me as really, really important, and we have to deal with that directly. So my goal is to get rid of that word fight. We may have conflicts, but certainly there's so much more we can agree on. In terms of how we're doing, I just want to bring your attention to this, which is something we're pretty proud of at VBA. Between May and June, I issued a challenge to our claims processing team. It's about 8,000 people in the United States who process the claims that you classically know when you apply for service disability. I challenged them in that period of time to do more work in 8 weeks than they'd previously done in the best 9 weeks on that period of time before. We called it the Independence Day Challenge. And I said, if you do this, I have limited flexibility in this job, can't give you more money, but the one thing I can do is give you time off. So I will give you the Friday of the July 4th weekend so you can have a 4-day weekend, and that will be something special for you to think about over Independence Day as to how you're serving veterans and what they'll think about that day. And so they did. I asked them to process 255,000 claims. They did almost 270,000 claims. Quality didn't change, and the other work didn't change. So I want you to know I'm pushing these guys hard to make sure they're serving veterans. That went so well, other folks came up, and we're actually running out a Labor Day challenge for others to do more work in the same period than they've ever done before. So just to let you know, a pulse on how's it all going. So let's go back to some of the things that relate to the Secretary's focus on customer service. One of them was appeals. So another piece of legislation in 2017 was appeals modernization. If you filed appeal prior to appeals modernization, you waited from 3 to 7 years to get a decision. It was long and arduous and nobody liked it. So the new law was passed in 2017 to modernize the appeals process. It was implemented on February 19th of this year, and there you see us celebrating the successful implementation. Again, trying to change the narrative that when things go to VA, they don't never end up working on time. It did. It began in 2019. Some of the highlights on the next slide are, at VBA, there's now 3 lanes for veterans to apply for appeal. You can go to the Board of Veterans Appeals. That's lane 3 and not represented here because the board is a separate entity and they manage that work. But you can choose somewhat expedited lanes that are represented here. Lane 1 is called supplemental claim. You add some more information. Lane 2 is a higher level review, kind of like the NFL. I want another review of this. Okay, we promised those claims will be done in 125 days, and you can see, while it's still early, they're being done significantly early, 50 and 30 days. So it's never a good idea to declare success early, but early indications are this is going very well. So I just want to let you know that's a pulse check on appeals modernization because I know it comes up. Next slide. I want to talk about the Forever GI Bill because this also was signed in 2017. Talk about, people make fun of Congress. They had a heck of a week, middle of August 2017. They got the appeals modernization signed by President, got the Forever GI Bill signed by President. It is what it does. It allows the GI Bill benefits to last forever if your service is after January 1st, 2013. It allows us to restore benefits if you've gone to a place where it's gone out of business, no fault of your own. It enables special benefits for Purple Heart. But like I told the folks in the back of the room when I came to their session early this morning, 2 really exciting things are what's known as vet tech, apprenticeships in the high-tech industry, and STEM, an additional 9 months of benefits for those folks studying science, technology, engineering, and math to get advanced certifications. So this is really interesting and powerful stuff. And there you can see the number. It's all over our website, and we're able to help people access it. And again, one of the most popular benefits that we operate. I'm showing the next slide because I want you to know we operate this pretty well. Last fall, we stumbled on implementing one feature of the Forever GI Bill, and it made the national news, and I made the national news, and it was like a pretty difficult situation because the computer programs didn't work, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to call your attention to the 3rd row there, timeliness of processing of applications. We promised they'll be done in 28 days, and again, it's not all us. We've got to get some information from the schools, but we're doing it in 23 right now as we're heading into the fall semester. Next slide. But I do want to talk about what I call the GI Bill reset. The Forever GI Bill had 28 provisions that were supposed to be done by August of 2018. Had 30 provisions. We did 28 of them, but the 2 that everybody was excited were the military housing allowance, which had been changed to better reflect student flows. and again, partially I was there, so if you get credit for stuff you didn't do, you get blamed for stuff you didn't do. We really came up short on this, and it ended up being particularly bad. And so it was such a difficult situation, we just said, we're not going to be able to implement those two features, sections of the law, until December 1st, 2019. So it's called the reset while we go back and figure out what went wrong and do it. And so basically, we're in the process of building new software, which will go into effect on December 1st of 2019. So in the spring of 2020, those sections which reflect how you're paid for your housing allowance will be in effect. So come January 1st, there will be checks based on the new methodology. We know it will be different for people because it's based on sort of where you take the preponderance of your credits. I don't want to get into this too much, but it's not just the main campus if you've been in other campuses. So in the fall, you'll see extensive communication. So I'd ask you to share with your members or folks the need to pay attention to this communication as we explain how the allowance is going to change. For the most part, it either is equal to what they're getting now or more. In some, it actually becomes less, and that's just kind of how the new rules work. So we'll try to explain all this to everybody. After we've done that, we're going to do in the spring of 2020 what we call a true-up. If you've been owed money, had the law been actually administered in 2018, we will go all the way back, recompute what you were owed, and sometime after we've done the spring semester, we will send you the difference in money. That's the true-up. Again, we'll have lots of comms in this. And finally, and most importantly, I'd ask you to look at the last one. If, come to find out, we've been overpaying you during this period of time, we will not collect the overpayment. Okay? So there should be no confusion of this. We're going to do tremendous amounts of communication. But if you have anybody going, hey, this GI Bill thing is new and I'm a little unaware of this, tell them, how can that possibly be? We probably send out 5 million emails a week on this, okay? And that's not much of an exaggeration. So please, please, please help us get the word out. Look for more on that. But very, very serious focusing, honoring the commitment made, acknowledging how we did come up short on this one. And don't worry, we all feel pretty bad. It was incredibly public. I will tell you, I went to a hearing that made national news. You always sort of imagine, wouldn't it be cool to be on national TV? Well, I tell you, I was and it wasn't. It was really pretty embarrassing. And it was so embarrassing, so this is the test. Why do you think you're going to get this right? This was my Thanksgiving. Maybe you have this here, where you go around the room and everybody says what you're thankful for. My mom is 94. She's still with us. My mom comes around and says, I'll be thankful if my son isn't on the national news and he gets the GI Bill implemented correctly. When your mom is telling you that, you know you've got to do it, okay? So that's my personal story on this one, okay? So next slide. Home loan guarantee, want to call your attention to that. The new law takes the cap off this, and this is good for high-cost areas. Very, very powerful benefit. Please, please, please encourage everybody who's thinking about renting to look carefully at home ownership. Can't tell you how valuable this is. What you see there is a now retired Army sergeant who was the 24th millionth home loan recipient. So this goes back, it is one of the original features of the GI Bill. This is genius stuff that creates wealth in our country, and I'd encourage everybody to be aware of that. But of course, related to that is the next slide, which is some of the stumbling we've done. We identified that there are a series of people who are owed funding fee refunds. Let me explain real quick. If you bought a home while your application for service disability was in process, when we finally granted you service disability, included in the incredibly small fine print is, boy, now, if you bought a home, you can get your funding fee refunded. Not a lot of veterans did this, a lot of structural and process problems. So we're in the process of identifying who we owe a refund to, and we'll have those refunds done by September 30th. If you think you're in this group, there's a phone number, there's websites. I'm going to leave the slides with your folks so they can mail it around and find the links. But that's something we're working on very, very aggressively to get that money back. And quite frankly, we're actually ahead of schedule, so I don't want to overpromise. But we know that's a pretty important thing, and we're fixing it. And quite frankly, the really good news is we were finally able to get somebody to understand the problem with the process, right? All the paperwork, all the details, all the stuff. Well, we actually know at VBA who has a home loan and who's now been granted benefits in such a way they don't need the, we're going to now match and just send the checks and stop all the extra paperwork. So we're trying, but I hope there's no lawyers in here. Boy, they can find reasons not to do anything. So it does take a while. So I just want to bring you up to date on that. And the last thing is, I understand this is the Army and Air Force National Guard, but the Blue Water Navy is a big piece of legislation. And I think there were some service members in the Army and Air Force on these ships, right? And this is important because this deals with Agent Orange and the presumption of who was covered and who was not. As you recall, the Agent Orange legislation focused on people who were on the ground in Vietnam and then in the brown waters on the rivers of Vietnam, but it never dealt with the folks offshore, 12 miles offshore. Legislation was just passed to include them, and that'll go into effect on January 1st of 2020. We're in the process of getting ready. We're getting ship logs, and we're scanning, and we're developing protocols and processes to do that. So on January 1st, we can begin to grant to the Blue Water Navy folks. Please, 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 if you have friends and they hear about it and they think January's forever away, ask them, say, please go and apply for benefits if you think you are covered. We can do the development work so that we can grant on January 1st. So that's just a little bit on that. There's a lot more information about that. That'll play out, again, more communication, more efforts to let everyone know that the benefits are there and available. And so we get a lot of questions, just so you know, maybe not relevant. Can I submit my own evidence? Yes, of course, you can do this for any claim. Often it's, records are old, but you have a picture or a buddy statement that shows you were on the ship in the 12 miles. That's the hardest thing to do, is find the ships and see where they exactly were. Though the Department of Defense, I will give them credit, and the Navy have been awesome working with us. Even the Archivist of the United States is providing the secret records that nobody gets to touch. We've actually been there, like in the National Treasure, the movie, right? Touching the stuff down there, and they're incredibly helpful. And come to find out, he's actually a Blue Water Navy veteran, so he's personally involved, and it means a lot to him. And yes, while January 1st is forever away, seems like, will the Blue Water Navy claims be expedited? And the answer is no. However, there are certain reasons we do expedite your claim, and they're listed there: old age, imminent homelessness, financial hardship, and a series of other things. So when you qualify for that, we expedite your claim. So it's our effort to let everyone know we understand the situation they're in and what we're doing to provide the benefits as fast as we can. So that's it. All right, so as I come to the end, I want to do two things with you here. The first is make an offer, which I've already discussed to your leadership, and that is appreciating the special nature of this group. I know, because I did this in my preparation to come here, that you all have special, unique challenges that are related to accessing benefits. I already got this when I talked to the folks this morning about what about this special case when I was here and I got some and I'm trying to add it to this and that. I understand how important the Guard is in our country. So instead of me going glibly, oh, I have all the answers, I just thought it through and solved that problem, what I've offered to do is have Mike in the back, who's flipping the slides, my VSO liaison, form a task force, some of our folks, and we've talked to your leadership about this, some of your folks, to really understand the particulars and try to figure out how we get after those issues. Some could be processes we don't understand. That's entirely possible. Some could be processes and rules we invented, and I can fix those. Others could be legislative, but most of them probably because we just don't understand the details. So that's my offer, and I promise to come back if I'm invited a year from now, or if not sooner, to really tell you like what we did and how we thought we were dealing, what your concerns were. So I want to make sure you leave with that, because I understand the special journey you all travel and the uniqueness you feel. And if we're going to make benefits accessible to you, we should actually make benefits accessible to you. So that's my intention on that. Okay? And the other thing is a request. You can go to the next slide. In the cabinet, VA feels like Rodney Dangerfield, and this is like a reference to something that the older people tend to get, right? The people who get no respect. The younger people in the back are looking up at the sky. They have no idea what I'm talking about. But you can Google him and see his tagline was, "I get no respect." And believe it or not, he was actually clean in his comedy, so it's also unique. And you sort of go, well, that's life. get thick skin, and we have that, and we do, but I just want to call your attention to what I'll call a constant cadence of bad news really leads to distrust. Well, why should I go to the VA? I hear such negative things about it. Oh yeah, nothing works and like, so I really need your help, what I'll call changing the narrative. Go to the next slide. I mean, here's some things to think about. The hospitals run the largest integrated healthcare system in the country. 9 million healthcare enrollees. This is a huge system, okay? The doctors in residence, remember I mentioned my son goes in residency? 123,000 doctors are at the VA learning how to become doctors. That's where they go to learn and train. That's where they go. And now I'll make this very, very personal. That's about a third of the doctors in the United States. If you ask your doctor, who's not related to the military or the service, where did you get your training? They're very likely to say VA. And I will tell you the truth now. Back to my son. So he finally comes ready to get a job, and he wants to leave the VA system and come back and live in the Northern Virginia area. When they found out he had been trained at the VA, he got 10% more in his pay than his peers did. That's how valuable this training is, and I'm not even thinking about what the cardiosurgeons and all that advanced medicine. So I can tell you, this is why I believe the VA will never be privatized. There is no place where this can happen. So this is why I don't lose a whole lot of sleep, because the people who are saying that simply don't understand how it works. At the VBA, as I've already told you, we administer $100 billion in benefits. Our budget's about $4 billion. You can do the math. That's penny on the dollars. People from around the world come to study how VBA operates, to include some private sector companies that wonder per capita how you can do that so cheaply. And if you really want to be excited, although it's kind of a difficult thing to think about, I know, the National Cemetery Administration has the unbelievably highest customer service as measured by the American Customer Satisfaction Index. They can't even believe how high that number is. So it's really a good news story. Next slide. But it's not just us telling you this. I just want to call your attention to a couple things. This year, the Partnership for Public Service, it's a good government organization, bipartisan in Washington, D.C., selected VA as one of the best places to work, which is historically not anywhere near the close conversation. And this has happened under Mr. Wilkie's leadership. VA healthcare on a Dartmouth report is good or better than anywhere in the country. The Journal of American Medicine, the wait times are shorter. And in a big customer service award ceremony, 11 VA leaders were recognized. So I just ask you to sort of think about perspective in the time of the world we're in, right? As a candidate and president, Donald Trump has made veterans the centerpiece of what he's talked about from the very beginning. The Congress, working with us, has provided the largest budget in the history of our country to the VA, and the laws that I just described to enable us to manage. Perhaps it's insider bias because I'm on the senior leadership team, but the senior leadership of the team is almost all veterans, and I just can't imagine there's been a time where there's been more management talent trying to drive the veteran agenda. And then, of course, if you think about what's happened with unemployment in the United States, right, and I don't think that's by luck, unemployment goes down, veteran unemployment goes down. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I rode the elevator up. I was just telling Frank this a minute ago. I rode the elevator after I came in and went to the party and ate my share of corn. And I rode the elevator up and got on in the hotel. And there were two, I always say younger women. I'm guessing somewhere between 30 and 40, but I can't really say those things publicly. But they weren't so young. And then other members came in. Other folks came in, people probably are here now, and pretty clearly I could figure out they were going to EANGUS. The women were awesomely polite and said, "Why are you here?" And the guy said, "Oh, we're with EANGUS." And they started talking very positively about what's going on. And I'm thinking, maybe I should tell them we have job openings at VA. But I said, it's like 9:30. Come on, everyone's like, whatever. Without missing a beat, the women turned and said, we're with the Department of Agriculture. We hire veterans all the time. Would you go to our website? And I thought, isn't that awesome? 9:30 on a Sunday night with no other reason other than they care. They're trying to help veterans. That's the time of the world we're in right now, and it's pretty darn exciting. So I'd ask you the next time you see somebody who interacts with you and you say, blah, 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 VA, and they roll their eyes or give you that kind of smirky thing, so just turn to them, and this is what I'd ask you to do. Say, listen, what you're saying is not accurate. America honors its veterans, and by any measure, VA provides world-class benefits and services. We have to stop this. If you have such a story, because inevitably I hear it, please share it with us. If you're a social media person, please share it out there. The Secretary likes to say we have almost 400,000 people in the VA, broadly. It's probably 375. There's 200 knuckleheads that get all the attention. So I really need your help changing that narrative. So a couple last little things here before quickly, and I'll try to do some questions. Connect with us now. I know there's a lot of folks on social media. We're really trying to up our social media presence. I mean, if you're playing with your phone right now, click on Twitter, go to the search bar, write Veterans Benefits. We'll pop up. Click on us. How are you going to find out what's going on? We really are trying to do that. Or any of the other ones, I'm not a Twitterophile. I just told you that because it came up first in my brain. But we're really trying to get that out there, and you can share your experiences and the like. Next slide. If none of those make any sense to you, you can call us. You can find us these ways. We'll do the same thing, okay? But again, there's all that information for you to have. So, and last slide, we are hiring, VBA in particular, cool jobs. Sounds like we're processing claims, but we do finance, we do science, we do math, we do computers. These are cool jobs that pay well, okay? So again, thank you very much for letting me be here. I yield to the chair to tell me how much time I'll have for Q&A if that's possible, but I really appreciate the opportunity to come and share what we would call the good news stories at VA. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. And so I think we've got time for maybe 2 questions. If anybody's got anything, you can come up to the mic. I would ask it, try and limit not casework because about your individual claim or what's going on, but if anybody's got anything for Dr. Lawrence. Do we have one? Okay.
Yes, Tony Nathy from Minnesota. 2 things. Recent legislation passed is exempting the IRS from going back only 3 years for adjusting income taxes. If a VA claim takes more than 48 or 60 months, and you have to refile, let's say, 5 years of back taxes, the IRS will only process 3 years back. But just in the last week, the Congress made an exception on another law that was passed that you can go back farther than 3 years. So all those veterans who out there waited 60 or 72 months to get their claims approved, they lost, in some cases, the 4th, 5th, and 6th year of taxes refiling. Has there been anything to address that?
Yeah, I don't want claims to go 48 to 60 months, but I understand your broader point. I was unaware of that. I'm going to take that and run that down because that's not our intention to unintentionally harm veterans in the way you're describing. So I would hope we could figure out how to do exactly that because that would just be unfortunate, quite frankly.
Yeah. Prior to this, the IRS wasn't making any
Yeah.
exemptions for that 3-year rule.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand. No,
The
thank you for
second
bringing
question is for Agent Orange. Has there been any additional law or investigation on the dependence issue for dependent physical claims for Agent Orange for Vietnam veterans?
Yeah, the law is pretty clear on this. So I know that the new law entitles benefits for dependents under certain circumstances, but that's pretty much it. We have a series of ongoing studies, but as you know, they always take a long period of times to get it right. So not more than what you're seeing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
To answer part of his question, VA compensation is not taxable anyway.
That's right.
I've been a county service officer for nearly 14 years, and you guys are making improvements. When I first started, it was taking about 240 days. You've got it down to half that. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah. Probably good to end on a compliment, so I'll call it a day. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Lawrence, for being here with us. Some great information about benefits. I think everybody can relate to some of this, and if you can't now, as you file for claims later on, very, very valuable information. We appreciate everything you do for our National Guard members and veterans across the United States. So as a token of appreciation, I'd like to give you our conference coin, and thank you so much for being here. All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Sergeant at Arms, please have our distinguished guests escorted from the head table.